So one day I ran outside and saw a watermelon, so I ran to it. I picked it up and then ran it back to my house to open it up the only way I knew how, with rubber bands. I put some rubber bands on it and then I got a sheet for when it breaks. And then I continued placing rubber bands on it with the help of my brother, and it was starting to actually work. I kept doing it, and then my brother drew a face on it.
Henry!
And then we just kept going until eventually we ran out of good rubber bands. So I was left with no choice but to run out in the rain, get in my car, and drive to Walmart. I got there, got my rubber bands, and then headed back home to get back to placing them. And eventually I could even see the indentation in the watermelon. And then I actually predicted it.
It's gonna bust.
When?
Any second.
Oh, God.
I just know it.
Instant replay. And it left this wad of rubber bands, like for me to turn it into a rubber band ball part 2. So one day I wanted to turn my brother's truck into a pull to drive down the road in. So I went to Walmart to get a blow-up pull to put in the truck bed. I got one, and then I also got a pull noodle. After that, we saw a pull that was actually designed for trucks, so we got that instead. And we got a donut and a water gun, and then we left. I walked out, went home, and then placed it in my brother's truck. Then I got my air pump and started airing it up. And after that was done, I got the hose and started filling it all up with water. It took quite a while, and while we filled it up, we simultaneously added hot tub water to make it less cold. Then I took the hose out, added one last bucket of hot tub water, and I was done. And I was just chilling on the floaty, and now my brother's going to drive down the road. Full vid will be on my YouTube at Dylan Ayres. So one day I wanted to make a cardboard saw like the paper saw I made. So I traced out a blade, cut it out, and then screwed it onto the angle grinder. And then I was ready to cut some fruit. I turned on my saw and started in on the apple. And it was working pretty well, so I kept going. And eventually I started in on the grapefruit, which ended up ruining my blade. So I took it off and made a new one from a cereal box. And then I screwed it onto the grinder and started trying to cut the cereal box in half. And it did pretty well and almost cut it entirely in half. And after that I started back in on the grapefruit, which ended up ruining this blade too. So I ripped the grapefruit in half and then threw it in the woods, and also threw the rotten apple in the woods. So one day I went to Walmart and got tinfoil to make a giant tinfoil ball like the ones I've seen people making on TikTok. I started with a small one and then began wrapping more and more tinfoil around it. And it looked pretty cool, like an asteroid. And I just kept wrapping it, and like a snowball, it just kept getting bigger. I continued to wrap it for quite a while, and it was beginning to look pretty cool. I finished it up, and then I took it outside to play basketball with it on my jankety hoop. And it stuck in the hoop, but I got it out and started playing with it. And not gonna lie, I was doing pretty good with it. I even made this long shot. Then I got it down, and while I was walking back, I shot from behind. And made it, yeah. And then it came down like a giant asteroid. Part 2, putting rubber bands on a watermelon. So it exploded and left us with this wad of rubber bands. So I decided to turn it into a rubber band ball with all the leftover rubber bands. I began by making the wad a lot neater, and I discovered this. There's watermelon inside this. So I did my best to get it out and then kept making it neater, and then eventually started placing actual rubber bands on it. And after a while, I took a break to go shoot some hoops with it. And let's just say it's not a basketball, and I ended up breaking my backboard more than it was already. And then I waited until the next day at like 2 in the morning to start trying to place more rubber bands on it. I finished my pile and started placing another bag, and eventually I was down to the last one. And to be honest, it was a lot of time for very little difference, but I got another bag anyway and started placing them. I finished it up and I had a ball, I guess. Let me know if I should even keep doing this. So one day I went to Walmart to get the stuff to retry my failed cardboard boat attempt. I got a bunch of tape and a pretty good amount of cardboard. And then I left, went home, and started building. I first began by setting up one sheet and taping it down. And then I added a second sheet and used a lot of tape to tape it to the first one. After that, I connected the two with a final sheet of cardboard and used a lot of tape to secure it. Next, I folded down all the flaps with a bunch of tape to make it thicker and float better. Then I flipped it over to tape the bottom, and I also added the base sheet and taped that down too. I finished taping that and then flipped it back over to tape the bottom up, and also added another sheet of cardboard for more support. Then finished off the boat by taping up the entire bottom to waterproof it. And it was done and ready to be tested in the creek. Cardboard boat part 2. So I picked up the boat and put it in my brother's truck along with an oar. Then we went down to the creek and I carried it down. Then I walked out to my launching point, got in, and pushed off.
Good job for you.
It was working.
I'm doing it. I always knew I could.
I kept on rowing, and it eventually started to leak.
There's just a slight bit of water coming in. Ever so slight.
But I still kept on rowing. I was approaching a current, so I rowed it to land and dragged it all the way back.
It worked.
I rowed in it some more, and then I drug it up. So one day I took a Power Wheels to a fast food place. I got in and drove on up after a lot of struggle. And then I pressed the button to order my food.
I would like a corn dog and a large tot. All right, thank you.
Then a car drove by and said,
500. Thank you. My daddy bought it.
I then sat there, waved at the camera, then played with all the car's buttons. And eventually my food came.
A corn dog and then a large tot.
Yep.
Get you an extra sauce.
All right, thank you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Then I drove away with my food, and I think this is going to become my new go-to vehicle. And it was a good corn dog. So one day I ordered a giant water balloon. I tried to figure out how I was going to fill it up, and then I thought, rubber bands. And then I began filling it up until eventually it started to leak. And I tried to fix it, but failed, so I just had my brother hold it while I jumped.
No.
Yeah, pretty cool. Now here's the slow-mo. Wow. And it was broken. So one day I went to Walmart and got some balloons, a helium tank, and some string. And then I headed home to tie a bunch of balloons to toilet paper and then send it off. Don't do this part at home.
Hi. Jack, oh my word!
Then I made my first balloon, and we were best friends. I drew a face on it to make it more real, and then we hung out. Yeah. But then I let go and it flew away. And then I went back inside to get busy. I started out by blowing up a ton of balloons and putting them on the ceiling, and I didn't know how many I needed, so I just blew up as many as I could until the tank was empty and I was on my last balloon. I'm going to take this toilet paper and this duct tape, some balloons, and I'm going to make it fly. So I put the duct tape on and then add some more balloons. But when I tried to attach the toilet paper, it was too heavy. So I got a smaller roll, and it worked.
It works.
Then I got a pen and paper out and wrote a nice letter. And then I attached it to the toilet paper.
You're welcome, America.
And then I let it go. Now don't get triggered. It's all just CGI. Computer generated image. But anyway, it kept going and it flew pretty far, and it was gone. Part 3 of making a rubber band ball. So this watermelon exploded and left us with this water rubber bands. So I turned it into this actual rubber band ball, and now we're here and I'm out of rubber bands, so I went to Walmart. I got some rubber bands and then went home and emptied them out and opened up a bag. And got busy. But after a little bit I left and then came back the next day. And finished off the pile. And then I dumped out 2 more bags and started placing them. But I got bored and ended up leaving and coming back again the next day to finish it all off. I placed rubber bands forever, and then I went outside to test it out on my broken hoop. Yeah, it was hard to play with, but it bounced really high. Here's it next to a basketball. Yeah. After that, I went back inside to finish off the pile, and then I dumped out another 2 bags and started placing rubber bands for what felt like an eternity. And I was finally down to the last bag. I put them all on, and I was done. And it's pretty big, but it's going to take like 1 million likes from. So one day I filled a giant hamster ball up with water and busted the zipper and all the water came out. Now I want to see if my hamster ball still works so I can put a hoverboard in it and ride in it. So I fixed the zipper and then aired it up. I wanted to see if it would still hold its shape after having all that water in it. And after it was all aired up, it still did. So I pushed it over a bush and out to the yard to mess with it. I kicked it, and then I pushed it, and then I jumped on it, and then I jumped on it again. And after that, I deflated it and then got in it with my hoverboard to air up. And after a little bit, it was done filling up. So I picked up my hoverboard, walked out to the street, sat it down, and got on. And it worked. I spun around, and I also drove to the hill part to go down it. And I fell. But I kept going. And then I turned around and went back up and fell again multiple times. And then I headed home and really fell. So I got out.
That was cool.
And drove off. So one day I turned on the TV and the Corona stuff seemed pretty serious. So I got up and got a bag of Rubik's Cube, some tape, and a fake gold chain. Then I got some Reese's in the kitchen for food. And then I went out the back door and headed for my cardboard treehouse. I climbed up it, and I was going to stay there until this was all over. I made it up there, opened my bag, and I took everything out, and I also ate my Reese's. I put on my fake chain, and then I accidentally got tape stuck to my wrist. Yeah, but I got it off. And then I just slept until it was all over. And I got up and packed everything up. And then I said,
I'm coming back out, world. Oh, thanks you.
then I made my way down the treehouse, using the mattress to crash on. So I came down after it was all over, and then I went inside, and everyone was gone, so I went to my car. I got in and drove where I thought people might be. I got out and walked around, and it was all empty and abandoned. There wasn't a single soul in sight. I contemplated life for a second, and then I went back to my car and just drove off. I came to a stop out in the middle of nowhere, got out, and just took off walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I was alone in this world, and that was okay. This is all a joke, by the way. So one day I grabbed my cardboard car and my hoverboard. I put them both in my car and then headed to Sonic drive-thru. I got there, got out, and got my hoverboard and my cardboard, and then put it on and headed over to order food. I rolled up in my cardboard car like a boss, and then I pressed the button. And eventually someone answered.
Sonic, my name's Hunter. Be my absolute honor. Take orders today.
All right, I would like a breakfast burrito and a medium strawberry limeade.
Set a breakfast. All right, is this all complete orders today?
Yep.
Have a super amazing day.
All right, you too.
And then I waited around in my box for my food, and then it said it's on its way.
Hello. That'll be all. All right, thank you.
I got my food and then drove off back to my car. Part 2 of putting a hamster ball in the creek. Don't try this at home or anywhere. So I walked in and it was pretty strong and started to carry me away. It was pretty neat in there, but when I tried to stand up and run, I just fell. So I laid down and then I got back up and tried again. But yeah, it never worked. So I just chilled and let the current take me, and then we came to this bridge thing and my brother and my dad stopped me. But I couldn't quite run up to land, and it was kind of a problem. And then some other people helped push, and I made it up and ran off. And then my brother unzipped me.
Good job, Jack. Whoa, my ears popped.
So one day I decided to see how much a pawn shop would give me for my rubber band ball. So I got in my car and drove out to one, but it was closed for another 30 minutes. So I waited, ate a burrito, and then went back in and said, I got this rubber band ball.
Okay.
I want to sell for $200.
Why do you think it's worth $200?
I put a lot of time into it. It's a lot of rubber bands,
How many rubber bands are in there?
like 14 bags.
How many is in a bag?
I have no idea. But it weighs 6.5 pounds.
Wow, does it bounce? Wow, bounce is pretty good. Well, how old are you?
16.
You gotta be 18 before you can do anything with it.
And then he said he'd give me $100 for it if I counted all the rubber bands and had someone 18 sell it for me. So I thought about it and said, 200.
No, I can't go 200 on it, but that'd be worth just watching you count that many rubber bands for $100.
500.
I couldn't get $500 out of a rubber ball.
How much do you think you could sell this for?
$50.
I'm gonna have to walk.
All right. Appreciate you coming in.
So then I walked out with my rubber band ball, and I guess I'm just gonna have to keep adding bands. So one day I went to the party store and got a bunch of giant balloons and a helium tank, and then went home to see what I could make fly away. I already had 2 blown up. I blew up the first red one, tied it, and then I blew up the second blue one and tied it. And now I had 4 balloons. And then I twisted and taped all the strings together and tried to lift up a weight, but it failed. So then I tried an apple. And it worked. After that, I had an idea to tie a box to the strings and send something away. I trimmed up the box and forgot the 4th balloon. So I tied it on and then went outside and taped a Tesla Hot Wheel to the box and tried to send it to space. And it went down. So I ripped off some cardboard and it still failed. I ripped off some more and it went to my roof, then fell off. I let it go a final time and it took off and left on into space. Part 5 of making a giant rubber band ball. So I've been making this rubber band ball and I ran out of rubber bands, so I went to Walmart. Got a bunch more rubber bands and then I went home, dumped 2 bags out, put some gloves on so I didn't break my skin again, and started placing the bands. And then left and came back the next day to finish off the pile. It looked pretty good so far, and then I forgot to video placing a whole nother bag. But it looks like this, and then I dumped out all the colored rubber bands and started placing them all on the rubber band ball. And I was done, and it was almost the size of my head and weighed 8.2 pounds. And bounced pretty high. And also made a decent basketball. So one day I was bored in quarantine and decided to take some of my cardboard and make a cardboard stair slide. I taped the first piece down and then got an air mattress and placed it at the bottom of the stairs because safety first, don't try this at home. I then added a second piece, taped it down, and then added a third, and then a fourth. After that, I threw a bunch of pillows down, and it was done. So I went down.
That was insane.
And then I went down again. And tossed the pillow to my brother so he could go down. I went another time. And then my older brother went. And we just went a bunch more times. So one day I got an air mattress, some cardboard, some tape, and I started making a cardboard boat. I started by taping one sheet of cardboard on the edge. And then I added another sheet on the end and taped it down. After that I added one last edge piece and taped it down all around. Then it was done. And I picked it up and put it in my brother's truck, and we headed down to the creek and carried it down to go test it.
Dude, let's just sail off right there.
I put it in the water, and then I got in and started rowing. And I rowed out decently far.
Dylan?
But any further I was headed for a current, so I made my way back. And then we both got in to sail. So now my brother got on with me and we rowed out.
Oh, God. Dude, this is so weird.
I waved goodbye to land, and then we rowed to another shore. But then we had the idea to row into the big current, so we both got in again and started rowing. We made it in the current, and it was pretty fun.
Oh, God.
We were spinning around.
Oh, God.
Oh, and almost hit a log.
Back to another current. Start pushing.
We eventually got it back to land and then pulled the boat back towards the bridge. So one day it was raining, but that wasn't going to stop me from going outside. So I got in my hamster ball and let it air up. Yeah, it took a second. But when it was done, I took off in the hamster ball. I ran through puddles and didn't even get wet. I also jumped in them and rolled in them. I was basically indestructible, and I ran around completely protected from the forces of nature. Until I fell. And then I ran off and started rolling a lot. For some reason, I don't know. And my hamster ball got dirty, so my brother hosed it off. But then I just ran back into a puddle and fell again. The end. Part 7 of making a rubber band ball. So I've been making this ball, and it's pretty giant now and weighs 10 pounds. But I wanted it bigger, so I went to Walmart, got a bunch of colored rubber bands, then went home, dumped them out, put my gloves on, and first finished off the pile of normal rubber bands that was already on the table. And once I was done with that, I dumped out all the bags of colored rubber bands and began placing them. I did this for quite a while, and the ball was finished, and it was huge. And it now weighs 11.9 pounds and is almost the size of a basketball. And it also bounces pretty high. And I also shot it in the hoop. And now I'm officially finished with it. It looks pretty cool. So one day I wanted to put chalk dash lines all around my neighborhood like I saw this girl on TikTok do. So I went to Walmart and got some spray chalk and some regular chalk. Then went home and tried to make a stencil out of cardboard but failed. Then I tested out some spray chalk, and after that I measured the middle of the road and marked it. Then I tied some rope to a hoverboard to try to pull me, but it failed. Then I made it longer and it still failed. So I tried walking, but that sucked, and I thought it'd be easier with some normal chalk, but it still failed. So I got out a hoverboard I thought was broken, and it worked perfectly. And when I ran out of one piece, I got a new one, and kept going all the way until the end of one side of my neighborhood. I ran out again, but kept going, and then was done. And then I went back home, got some more chalk, and went out to the other side of my neighborhood to get started. And I finished off the neighborhood and ran out of chalk. And then on the way home, my hoverboard died, so I had to carry it all the way home. And now here's driving before the lines, and here's driving after. So I've been making this giant rubber band ball, and I'm just going to keep adding rubber bands every time Walmart restocks. So I went there, got a few more bags of colored rubber bands, then went home and started with the 2 bags I ordered on Amazon. I placed the entire pile until you couldn't see a colored rubber band in sight. And then I left and came back later to place the colored rubber bands I got at Walmart. And I placed it until I was done. It's huge and now weighs almost 26 pounds, is super hard to throw and really hard to catch, but I can still make a basket with it and even stand on it now. Well, kinda. Like if you think I should keep going.